This month, let's look at the Garden Birdhouse stamp set. This is a fantastic stamp set. Look at those great sentiments, and this font on that is just fantastic. There are 19 stamps altogether in this stamp set, and some of the really cute ones are the little birds. I think are fantastic. So let's get started and see what's in our pack. What you're going to need for today's class are for inks, Memento Black. The reason we're using black Memento is so that we can use either our Stampin' Blends or markers to color in some of the images. If you want to use watercolor pencils, that's fine, but change to StazOn so that it will not smudge the ink. We're also going to be using Early Espresso, Soft Succulent, and Evening Evergreen for some of the images of the grasses and the leaves of the branch. So just to let you know, if you do not have those colors, just use whatever you have on hand. I just wanted to let you know that you don't have to follow along exactly. Use what you have, and that is fantastic. I wanted to show you that once you open up the Garden Birdhouse stamp set, you'll notice that it's a polymer stamp set. And these are the ones that you can see through. Now, when you stamp with that, you may want to have a little mat or a catalog or something underneath. Because these stamps do not allow any give, if you stamp on a hard surface, you may not get a full clear image. You'll also know that inside the stamp set case, Stampin' Up! Has changed some of their, the way that they set it up. So they have the images on the inside, so you can either put it back on the paper that it comes on, or you can place it directly on the stamp set itself. Okay, just to let you know. Okay, so those are the options that you can do with that. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop me an email at northernstamper@gmail.com. And my name is Tina Kavergich if you have any questions. So let's get started. The first card we're going to get started with you're going to pull out in your package, there is a piece of DSP, and there's another piece. Let's just lay them out right here. Okay, just laying them out. And you'll notice that I have pre-cut the basic white and rounded the edges for you. Now this is from a punch that is in the catalog. And you'll notice that I've rounded the edges for you of the card base. So this is from the Detailed Trio punch, and it can be found on page 150 of the annual catalog, and it is $27. There are 3 different punches that you can do. There's the rounded corner and 2 other options that you can do. So I'm going to take a look, grab that, and show you what you can make with that. Okay, so with the rounded corners, what I'm going to do, so this is the Detailed Trio punch. Comes with 3 corners that you can use. Oops, there you go. So one of them is the rounded corner. You just slide it in and press down, and that gives you a nice rounded corner. If you wanted to do, it's like a little holes for like a tag. Oh, not that one. You turn it around and you just slide it in. So I've rounded both corners, and all I'm going to do is just slide this in. Oops. Oh, apparently I have 2 here, so. Okay. Slide it in, and it's going to punch a hole just like that. If I wanted to use the 3 little kind of leaves on the corner, again, like the first one, I slide it in, and I press down, and that gives you a little punch out area on that, and that matches the rounded corner. So what I could do with this now is actually make a tag and run some ribbon through that and just add it on. So that's kind of an interesting idea. So just to let you know what you can make with that. All right, so that is the Detailed Trio on page 150. The DSP we are going to be using is from the In Good Taste, which is on page 132. And we're just going to be using the kind of, it's like a plank version. So just in case you would like to see that. So that is on page 132, and it's called In Good Taste. And this one is from Beauty of the Earth on page 130. And we will be placing those together. So in the meantime, let's get started assembling this. Okay? I did want to point out that in your package is a piece of linen thread. Now this is no longer available, but I wanted to get some linen thread in your package so that you can use it. So this is no longer available. If it does come up on the clearance section, I highly recommend it. It is a great little linen thread, and it ties really nicely, as you'll see later as we create with this card. So let us get going. So we're going to start with the basic white piece, and what we're going to do is we're going to add some of the images from the birdhouse on there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to open it up, and we're going to use the 3 birdhouses that are here. Okay, so I'd like you to place those on the block. Doesn't matter which one you start with. Okay, I am going to start with the one that is on, so kind of facing towards the right, because I'm going to work from one side and over. So I'm going to look for that and peel it off. And what I'm going to do is just place it on a block. Okay, so let's get that on the block. And I am going to be doing this in early espresso. If you want to do the coloring, that is fine. Just go right ahead and use Memento if you like. But I'm going to be using early espresso. Okay, so I'm going to ink up the birdhouse, and it was the one that is facing towards the right. So I'm going to stamp it on the left-hand side. Okay, and what I'm going to do is kind of do like a V shape so I can get my sentiment and anything I want to add in the background on there. What we're also going to be adding is the poles on here. Okay, just to let you know. And if you want, we'll be adding a little bit more. So I have that one on a block. I'm just going to add the next 2 birdhouses onto the block. And the next one I'm going to do, so it's 1, 2, and 3 I'm going to be using. Okay. And I'm just going to do the next one. If you find that it is crooked and you're unhappy with it, just flip over the page and restamp the image on the other side. Okay. And I'm just going to do that. So I have all 3 done. Those look fantastic, don't they? So let's add the poles. And actually there was the one little antenna I want to put on the top, or maybe I'm going to put a bird. So I'm going to put the stick, which is this one right here. And I'm putting it on a long block, which is an H. Now I'm going to be very careful by not rocking it too much, so I'm just going to place it underneath and just keep going across. Okay. I'm going to try and tuck it up as close to the birdhouse as I can. Okay. So now they look like they're sitting on there. What I can do is I can now, if I want to add that little antenna on the last one, I can just lay it on top and see that, oh, there is enough room. That one looks like it's got a TV antenna. I wonder if I do that one. So let's add that onto the middle one. I think that's going to look really cute. And I'm going to use one of the long small blocks, and this is block G. And I'm going to ink it up in the early espresso. Oop. And just stamp it on there. Okay. Now, well, if I want to, actually I think what's really going to be cute is they have a couple of little birds on there, and I'm going to add them around. And then I'm also going to add some of these onto the bottom, the little pieces of grasses to the bottom. So let's toss on a couple of the little birds. And I am using actually the tiny blocks, which is block number A. Okay, because it is small enough. I don't like to use something too large because then it gets very difficult to handle. Now, isn't that so cute? And I'm going to, so there's 2 or 3 birds, so I'm going to see which one I want. I want the other one that is looking the other way. So I'll put him over here, pick him up on the block, ink it up, and they're going to be like having a little conversation there. Are not those the cutest little things? And I love the color of the early espresso. I think it doesn't make it so bold as with the black. But like I said, I am not going to be coloring with the blends. I might actually color a little bit, very slightly, with the watercolors, but I'm going to do that very carefully. So let's continue on and get some of the grasses. And I'm going to be placing those on some of the blocks. I have another block A, and I see it doesn't fit, so let's get something a little bit larger. So there is one of the grasses, another one on the block G. I have quite a few blocks because I find that some of them I use quite a bit. In particular, C. Block number C is one of my most used, and it is always good to have the other sizes like block A and B. Talking about blocks, if you do have a couple blocks and it's like a C and a D, consider when you reach your reward level at $200, especially this month at $300, because you get extra, is purchase the 10% block package, and it's going to save you some money. I'm just going to add a little bit along the edge here. And they're always great to have because you can always have one full set of blocks, and there we go. And the extra ones are always good to have around. Always have one full set because you never know what size some of your images are going to be. But keep a couple of the most popular like C and D. Okay, so I have that set down like that. Now I'm going to just add a little bit of color, and I'm going to be using the watercolor pencils. So I'm going to go grab that, and let's see how it turns out. So I added some color onto the birds, and the harder you press, the more color that you're going to get. So I'm just going to add a little bit of color here and there in the different spots. I'll add some color to the flowers, and then we'll just add in a little bit of green. And I might put in some brown for the birdhouses. Okay. All right, so what I have done is I've now colored it in. I'm going to take my blender pen, and I'm just going to, first of all, I'm going to wipe off just to make sure, and I'm going to carefully and very gently touch up the paint portions that I want to color. Okay, I'm not going to press really, really hard. I don't want it to soak through the paper. So, and all I'm going to do is just touch it up a little bit to blend in and move around that or the watercolor pencils. So for the images. So I'm not going to press too hard, and like I said, I'm not going to make it too wet because I don't want to smudge any of the ink. Okay, because once you start doing that, it starts going all over the place. Okay, so you're going to notice in between colors, I'm going to wipe off a little bit. I don't want to transfer any of the colors from one to another. So I'm just going to paint that a little bit. And I'm just going to tuck it into some of the little white corners. And what happens is this blender pen with the tip has a little bit of water, so it does kind of move the pencil like a paint around. And it takes away some of those harsh lines. Okay, so I'm trying to stick with the same colors. If you don't have a blender pen and you just have a little paintbrush, that's good too. That's fine. That works well. Just don't make sure the paintbrush is just not too wet, and otherwise you're soak the paper. And you don't want to do that. Okay. All right. Like I said, I'm trying to stay with the same colors. And then wipe off in between. Okay, let's finish up that blue. And I try and use the colors so that they bring into each other. I'm going to leave the little flowers by themselves because I don't think they need painting. Okay. So that's it for that. What we're going to do now, let us bring in those pieces again that we've had. And I am going to mount that on the designer series paper. You'll notice that the bottom is cut also the same way. Okay. And I'm just going to lay that on top. Actually, I think I'm going to use dimensionals on this and pop it up. Okay. Let's add some dimensionals. Or if you don't have any and you just want to have just straight glue, that is fine too. Okay. Okay, let's put that on there like this. Okay, there. Now, let us work on our sentiment. Now, I wasn't sure if you want to have a large sentiment at all or not. So this is what the sentiment is for. If you don't want to do that and you want to have it on a piece of white cardstock, go right ahead. I'm going to actually cut these as a little bit smaller. So I'm going to do my sentiment first. And I'm just going to use this longer one because I think it's going to look really nice. And I need a block. Let's put that on the block. And once again, I'm going to be using the Early Espresso. So I'm going to do one on the DSP and one on the basic white for you so you can see the difference. Oh, that's crooked, sorry. There, that's better. So there's the white. And let's place it on the It's a little crooked too. I'm going to just turn that around. It's even worse. All right, so I'll go with the first one. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut that out. All right, so I have them cut out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to see which one I like the best on here. So I didn't know if you wanted a large piece with your sentiment for the background or just a smaller one. I'm going to put one on each. I'm going to actually cut down my DSP because it is a little larger than I wanted. I want it nice and framed on the top and bottom with my sentiment. Okay, you can always leave this as it is, or you can put your sentiment on the inside, or you can place this on the outside. So I am going to cut this little piece down. So I'm going to do is I've glued this on to the little DSP piece, and I've cut off the overhanging edges now. Okay. And let's take a look. I'm just going to add that onto, with dimensionals again, over the bottom portion of the image. And I'm going to line it up on the left and the right of the white where the birdhouses are. And if you want, you can add a little bow. Let's make a little bow. And we'll add this to the birdhouse if you like. I'm going to make a tiny little bow and secure it with a dot. You can do this after you've added it to the card base. I'm just going to add it over here on the side. Okay. And now I'm going to add this to the card base, put some adhesive in each corner to make sure it stays down. Oh. Okay. And I'm going to frame it nicely all the way around. Okay. Trim off my ribbon. And there we go. And that's it for the first card. It will look just as lovely as if you didn't color it. It would look really nice with all of the early espresso color. So there you go. All right, ladies, let's move on to the next one. And the next one has the pale papaya. There is a piece of ribbon, a pale papaya ribbon, piece of cardstock in green, a sentiment tag, and a piece of white. So what we're going to do this time is let's start with the basic white. Okay, and I'm going to be bringing in now the branches here. So we're going to be using this branch. So let's get that up onto a block. And I'm going to be placing that on block number E because it's a little larger. Okay. I wonder if there's a smaller block I can use. I'm just going to double check. So the E is a little large. Ah, that one might work a little bit better. So I'm going to use the longer one, which is an I. Okay. And I'm going to ink that up with Evening Evergreen. Okay. And because it's a little larger, there we go. We're going to hold on and gently press, turn. So I have that inked up, and I'm going to start with the branch off to the left coming in. Okay. Going to do that, and I'm going to just do a couple of those so it looks like kind of a tree portion. I'm going to tie that in. And as we can see, it kind of branches off a little bit. All right. What I'm going to do is down in the right corner is bring in some of the flowers again in the same color of the evening evergreen. Okay. There we go. That's a really nice color. Very pretty. Now, if you want, what a suggestion is getting some Stampin' Blends in another color of the green. So let's get a look and see what that will look like. So I'm going to be coloring in the Soft Succulent. And as you can see, I'm just coloring along the edges in the white portions. Not going to be touching too much into the ink to smudge it at all. Okay. And just very lightly touching it. So let's bring in some pale papaya for the flowers so it draws in from the card base itself. Okay. Once again, I'm using the little nib end, and I'm just going to touch in the white portions in between the ink. So I don't want to smudge it. So right now I'm actually just doing little dots. Okay. All right. Now let's add in one of the birdhouses here. Now actually this time I'm going to take the little piece of the birdhouse that is hanging down. So I'm going to be using this as a rope. And let us get that in there. And I'm going to be using actually the Early Espresso again. I really, really like how that color is. Not overly bold, but you can always use the black if you like. And I'm going to hang this off, try and hang it off into one of the branches. Okay, so let's get that in. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to see if I lay it in where in the branch I'm going to put it. So it looks like it actually might come off better from here. Okay. And I'm going to ink up the birdhouse and have it like that. Okay. And I'm going to add one of the little birds on there. I'm going to actually place the bird in the Memento Black. And I'm going to place him on the little birdhouse. Oh, maybe up in the tree. Okay. All right. I'm going to actually color in that little bird with some more of the papaya. Okay. There we go. And I'm going to add a little bit of crumb cake to the birdhouse to fill it up. If you don't have any Stampin' Blends, that's okay. You can always just leave it the color that it is. So I'm just going to carefully touch up. I'm using the dark and the light. I'm going to use the dark on some of the access points that I think would be darker. So around there. Okay. And I'm going to go back over it with the nib end of the light crumb cake and blend these colors together. I want to do that so that there's no harsh line there. All right. Okay. So I was thinking of having this on here somehow, but I think instead I'm just going to have it with the ribbon. Once again, you can either stamp your sentiment on this piece or you can place it on there. I am actually going to place my sentiment directly onto the matte portion. And to double check, I take the stamp set and I'm just going to lay it on to see if it fits. And it does, and I'm going to take it and place it in the same color as the early espresso. I really like the brown. Make sure it's well inked. And I'm just going to pop that on here. Okay. Before I add it to the card base, I'm just going to add my ribbon on. Okay. I'm going to tape it around the back. And I'm going to make one of those shoelace little knots. So I'm going to make sure it's well secured on the back. Bring it around. And I just need a finger width because the rest I'm going to use as the knot. So I'm going to bring that around, tape it. Make sure it's well secured. Now I'm going to come back, and before I knot it, I'm going to trim up the end. Actually, I'm going to just fold it over and make a little V before I trim. Bring that in and make a little knot. There. Very cute. Now I do have this piece left over, so let's see what we can do with that. I can place that right on there like that. Very cute. But you know what? I want to bring in some of that green. I like that green. And even though it's just a corner, I'm going to add it to the card, not as a full base, but just as a little accent onto the top. And then I'm going to adhere it down onto the card base itself. Make sure it's well secured all the way around. And let's pop this guy on the top. I'm going to take a look from the top and bring him nicely matching in. There we go. If you do have some Wink of Stella, let's carefully, with the Wink of Stella, just carefully touch where the ink is. You don't want to rub it, otherwise you are going to smudge the ink itself. So just going to do a little touching around the very fine parts. Okay, and I might just add a little bit to the bird. Why not? Birds should have sparkle too. There you go. You can always add some embellishments if you like. If you want to take a look to see how they look, just kind of lay it on top and see if it needs some. I'll just add one just right there. Oh, maybe 3. Always 1, 3, or 5, right? And just add these kind of in. There we go. And that's it for card number 2. So are you with me so far? I wanted to show you, I've placed all my stamps back into the stamp case, and I wanted to show you what it looks like when you have them all inside. So I have them actually attached to the case itself and laying right on top of the image. This way I won't lose it, but just as a tip, you want to have them covered like that. Let's put the last piece on top. So there we go. Keeps them all in place, and you will notice if you are missing one, there'll be an empty spot. So very good to have that on there. All right, are we ready for the last card? I left this one to the end because it does have a few more steps, but it is a lot of fun. And it is actually my own design. So I have not found this anywhere on the internet. So let's take a look what's in the package for this one. There is a piece of ribbon, and that is called the Misty Moonlight ribbon. And there is the designer series paper. I think it is just fantastic, don't you think? Again, this is from Beauty of the Earth. Now, I didn't know which side you wanted to use. You can use either side if you like. What I'm doing is I'm pulling the colors of the Misty Moonlight from here and some of the green, the Pear Pizzazz. You will also have a piece of Pear Pizzazz cardstock. And I have pre-cut a piece of a basic white. We're going to be doing some modifications to this piece of white, just to let you know. Okay? And I have pre-scored this piece of Misty Moonlight. We also need to make some changes to this, so let's get started with that. You are going to need your trimmer. Okay, so what we're going to do, grab your trimmer, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a mark with my pencil. Okay, and I'm going to make the mark at roughly about 2 inches on the top, and you're going to make that mark again, roughly about 2 inches on the bottom. Okay. Now that we have those 2 marks, what I'm going to do, you are going to be doing some cutting. So what I want you to do is to take where the score line is from the one side. So I'm basically just kind of turning it. I'm going to take the score line into the track. I'm going to look for the mark that I have made, bring that over to the track also. Okay, and I am just going to cut on a diagonal, so as you pull it away, it has a triangle piece. Okay. Oh. Okay. I'm just going to change my blade because it is very rough and as it cuts. So that tells me it's time to change my blade. So hold on a second as I change the blade. This does happen when you do a lot of cutting. I had recently done quite a bit of cutting, and it does dull the blade. Okay, so I just clean that up a little bit. Again, I'm going to look for the mark on the other side. So I have it so far like this. So I'm going to look for the mark on this side, place it in the track, and take the score line and place it in the track again. And then I'm going to cut. So there we go. We got another triangle. And it should look something similar to this. Okay? All right. I'm going to take this aside. Let's put the trimmer aside. Don't put it too far. We're going to need it. So the idea, what we're going to do now is we are going to take our piece of green, our Pear Pizzazz, and we're just going to lay it inside. So we got the angle on the right and the angle on the right again on the bottom. What we're going to do is we are just going to stamp our images in Memento Black. I'm going to add a couple of birdhouses. I'm going to stamp them in the black and just add them in. Now, as I ink it up, I can see through if I have enough ink on there. So I'm just going to stamp that. And I'm going to add another one. And the third one, what I did is I stamped on a piece of, just an extra piece of white, and I'm going to cut it out. So I've cut it out already. Okay, so I just fussy cut that, and I will place that on with dimensionals and place that on in between. Okay, so let's ink up the pole for these houses. Okay, one more for that third one that I'm going to add on top. For me, I feel like it needs a little bit of grass on the bottom. So once again, I'm going to add a little bit to the bottom. Place it on the block and just around the poles. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit of color with some Stampin' Blends. Just touch it up. Okay. And I'm just going to add a little bit of color to the birdhouses. And I'm just using Crumb Cake Dark and Light. All right, so I'm going to add my birdhouse to the front of that with some dimensionals. There we go. Just pop them up a little bit. You could always add a little bit of bird to the top or the bottom. And I'm just going to add a little sentiment on there. Just pop it right on top. There we go. Now I'm going to bring back in my card base now. Okay. And I'm going to fold together those pieces. And where I'm going to add the glue, it's very important that you only do the top portion and not the whole card. So I'm going to add the adhesive to the top portion. Oh, doesn't like that part. Oh my goodness. Only the top portion. Very important that you do only the top portion. And I'm going to frame it. Okay. So that when it opens, that it doesn't glue down. Now, because I made a boo-boo on the back of one of these, I'm just going to have to cover that up. Now, the idea is we're going to close up the card and tie our little bow. Okay. And just make a little bow. There. And that will hold it down, just like that. And there you go. Those are the cards that we have created now with the birdhouses. Okay. And there we go. Tried to give you some different ideas on what to create. Okay, let me know what you think, and I will post some different pictures and create some tutorials on these cards itself, along with some others that I come across.